You'll take every inch until you can't walk, the giant vampire king told the virgin nun. Towers of dark stone stood tall across the kingdom, sharp and cruel, like teeth biting into the earth. At the center of it all stood Blackthornne Castle, home of the vampire king. His name was King Valor. He was called the Giant King, not only because of his great height and strength, but because his presence felt too large for any room. When he walked, shadows moved with him. When he spoke, silence followed. His red eyes had seen centuries of war, betrayal, and blood. But none had seen his fear. Valor was cursed. Long ago, when he was still human, he had loved a holy queen who believed light could save even monsters. When she was betrayed and killed by her own court, her final prayer became a curse. Valor was turned into something immortal, something feared. He would rule forever, but never feel peace. And worst of all, he would hunger forever, not just for blood, but for meaning. Far from the castle, beyond the dead forests and broken roads, stood a small stone abbey on a cliff. Bells rang there every morning and night, even though no one else in the kingdom believed in light anymore. Inside that abbey lived Sister Alowen. She was young, quiet, and gentle. Her hair was the color of soft ash, her eyes clear like morning rain. She had been brought to the abbey as a child after her village fell to the night. She remembered little of her life before, only fire, screaming, and darkness. The abbey raised her in prayer and silence. Alowen believed that light still listened. She believed it deeply. That belief was rare and dangerous. One night, black riders came to the abbey. Their horses had red eyes. Their armor carried the mark of the vampire king. The abbess knew what it meant. The ancient law had been spoken again. An offering must be made, not a sacrifice of blood, but of faith. The legend said that once every century, the King of Night demanded someone untouched by darkness, someone whose soul still believed. Such a soul could calm the curse for a time. It could quiet the hunger. Alowen was chosen. She did not cry when she was told. She only bowed her head and whispered a prayer. The journey to Blackthornne Castle took 3 days. The land grew colder with every step. Trees twisted like broken bones. The air smelled of ash and old rain. Alowen walked without chains, but fear followed her like a shadow. At night, she dreamed of red eyes watching her. On the 4th night, the castle gates opened. The doors were massive, carved with images of fallen kings and broken angels. Inside, the halls were wide and silent. Torches burned with blue fire. Alowen felt small, very small. Then she saw him. King Valor stood at the far end of the great hall. He wore black armor that looked like living stone. His crown was dark iron, sharp and heavy. His red eyes fixed on her, and the air itself seemed to hold its breath. He stepped forward. Each step echoed. Alowen's heart beat fast, but she did not run. Valor studied her carefully. He could hear her pulse. He could smell her fear. Yet beneath it was something else, something pure and steady, faith. It burned like quiet fire. "You are the offering," he said. His voice was deep, calm, and heavy with power. "Yes," Alowen replied. Her voice shook, but she did not lower her eyes. That surprised him. "Do you know why you are here?" Valor asked. "To walk where I am sent," she said softly, "and to endure." For a moment the great hall felt warmer. Valor narrowed his eyes. "You speak like someone who understands weight," he said. "This kingdom breaks people." "I know," Alowen said, "but I am not alone." He laughed once, a dry sound without joy. "There is no God here," he said. "No light, only me." He moved closer until his shadow fell over her completely. "You will take every inch of this world," he said, his voice low and serious. "Every burden, every truth, until the girl you were can no longer stand as she was." The words were not spoken with desire. They were spoken like a sentence. Alowen felt fear tighten her chest, but she did not step back. "Then I will walk," she said, "even if I tremble." Something old and painful stirred in Valor's chest. He turned away sharply. "Take her to the East Tower," he commanded. "She stays under watch." That night Alowen could not sleep. The tower room was cold but clean. From the window she could see the dark land stretching endlessly under the moon. She knelt beside the bed and prayed, not for escape, but for strength. Far below, deep within the castle, Valor stood alone in a chamber filled with ancient runes. They glowed faintly as he passed. Then they began to crack. Thin lines of light spread across the stone. Valor stopped. His eyes widened. The curse was reacting, not to him, but to her. For the first time in centuries, something in Blackthornne Castle had changed, and the King of Night felt it. The sky only shifted from deep black to a lighter shade of gray. Still, bells rang in the distant towers, marking the hours of a kingdom that no longer followed the sun. Sister Eloin woke before the bells. She sat up slowly on the narrow bed of the east tower, her breath forming small clouds in the cold air. The castle felt alive at night, but during these pale hours it felt watchful, like it was waiting. She placed her feet on the stone floor and whispered a short prayer, not for safety, but for courage. A soft knock came at the door. 2 guards stood outside. Their armor was dark, but their faces showed no cruelty, only obedience. "The king summons you," one said. Eloin nodded and followed them. The halls seemed longer in daylight that was not daylight. Shadows clung to the walls. High windows showed nothing but clouds moving slowly, like tired spirits. They led her into a wide chamber filled with long tables and ancient banners. At the far end, King Valor stood near a tall window, his back turned. He did not move when she entered. "Leave us," he said. The guards obeyed. Silence filled the room. Valor finally turned to face her. He looked different in this gray light. Less like a creature of night, more like a king carved from sorrow. His red eyes rested on her, sharp and searching. "You slept," he said. It was not a question. "Yes," Eloin replied. He nodded slightly as if that answer mattered. "You will walk the castle today," Valor said. "You will see its truth, no lies, no comfort." "I understand," Eloin said. "You think you do," he replied. "But stone remembers suffering." He gestured toward the door. "Come." They walked for hours. Valor led her through halls where old kings had ruled and died, through chambers where broken crowns were kept behind glass, through long corridors carved with names of battles lost and won. Eloin listened as he spoke. He told her how the kingdom had once been bright, how humans and Nightborn had lived together under laws of balance, how fear had poisoned trust. "They blamed me for their weakness," Valor said quietly, "so they prayed for my fall." "And the prayer became a curse," Eloin said. "Yes," he replied. She stopped walking. Valor turned back, surprised. "A prayer made with hate is not holy," Eloin said, "but it still has power." His eyes narrowed. "Careful," he warned. "Faith can wound more deeply than steel." "I know," she said. "It wounded you." The air grew heavy. Valor stared at her for a long moment, then turned away again. "Keep walking," he said. They reached a high balcony that overlooked the lower city. Eloin gasped softly. Below them stretched miles of dark streets and silent homes. Fires burned in iron bowls. People moved slowly, heads down, wrapped in cloaks. "They live because I allow it," Valor said, "because I control the hunger." "You carry a great burden," Eloin said. He laughed bitterly. "A burden," he said. "This is a prison made of crowns." She looked up at him. "Then why do you keep it?" Valor froze. No one had ever asked him that. "I rule because if I fall, worse will rise," he said. "Monsters without law." "Or maybe," Eloin said softly, "you rule because you believe suffering is all you deserve." His hand tightened on the stone railing. "Enough," he said sharply. "You speak too freely." "I speak because you brought me here," she replied. "You wanted me to see, to endure." Something dark and restless moved in his chest. "Yes," he said, "and you will." That evening, Eloin was taken to the castle library. It was vast, filled with endless shelves and glowing runes. Ancient books whispered softly as if they remembered the hands that once touched them. A tall figure waited inside, the keeper of records. He was pale, thin, and older than the walls themselves. "This is where truth sleeps," the keeper said, "and sometimes screams." Aloan swallowed. "You will study here," Vaylor said. "You will learn what this kingdom truly is." "For how long?" she asked. "Until you break," Vaylor replied, "or until you change." The keeper bowed slightly and led Aloan inside. As Vaylor turned to leave, something strange happened. The runes above the door glowed brighter, then steadied. Vaylor felt it again, that pull in the air. She was affecting the castle. Days passed. Aloan read histories filled with loss, stories of families torn apart by war, of promises broken, of kings who chose fear over mercy. She did not cry. She prayed quietly between pages. The keeper watched her with growing unease. "You should be fading," he said one night. "Most do." "I am tired," Aloan admitted, "but I am still here." "That is not normal," the keeper whispered. "No," she agreed, "but neither is this kingdom." One night alarms rang, shouts echoed through the halls. Aloan rushed to the window and saw flames near the outer gate. Intruders, assassins. The castle shook with movement. Before she could think, the door burst open. Vaylor stood there, his armor darkened, his eyes burning brighter than before. "Stay here," he commanded. But as he turned to leave, a sharp pain struck him. He staggered. A black arrow lay on the floor, poisoned. Without thinking, Aloan ran to him. She caught his arm and helped him stand. "Why?" he demanded. "Because you are hurt," she said simply. He stared at her, stunned. A shout came closer. Aloan stepped in front of him. "I will not move," she said. The air around them changed. The castle responded. The runes flared and the attackers fell back, fear in their eyes. Vaylor felt the poison slow, not stop, slow because of her. As the guards arrived and the danger passed, Vaylor looked down at Aloan. She was shaking, but she stood. For the first time in centuries, the Vampire King felt something close to hope, and that frightened him more than any blade. The poison did not kill the Vampire King. But it did not leave him either. For days after the attack, King Vaylor remained awake through the long gray hours, standing by the high windows of Blackthornne Castle. His strength returned slowly, like a tide that had forgotten how to rise. The court whispered. They spoke of betrayal, of weakness, of the nun who stood between the king and death. Vaylor ordered silence. Aloan was moved from the east tower to a chamber closer to the inner halls. It was not a reward and not a prison. It was a place where the walls were carved with old symbols, marks of binding and memory. She felt them watching her. Every night she prayed. Every night the castle listened. On the 7th night after the attack, the keeper of records came to Vaylor with fear in his eyes. "The old scripts are changing," the keeper said. "They are rewriting themselves." Vaylor stiffened. "That is not possible." "The curse does not agree," the keeper replied. They went together to the deepest chamber of the castle, where no light burned except what the runes allowed. The walls there were covered in ancient words, written by hands long turned to dust. And now, new lines were forming. Vaylor read them slowly. "When faith walks the shadow." The air around her grew heavier, as if the castle itself leaned closer. When she touched the stone walls, she felt warmth, then sorrow. Vaylor came to her chamber alone. "You are changing the curse," he said without greeting. "I am only walking where I am led," Aloan replied. He studied her face. She looked tired now, not broken but thinner, like a candle burning steadily. "There is a deeper path," Vaylor said. "It is not meant for mortals." "Then why does it open for me?" she asked. He had no answer. "You will see what made me," he said at last. "Every choice, every failure." "I am not afraid of truth," Aloan said softly. "I am," Vaylor replied. The ritual chamber lay beneath the castle, below even the dungeons. No chains were kept there, no weapons, only memory. The floor was smooth black stone, and a circle of symbols surrounded a shallow pool of dark glass. The surface did not reflect faces, it reflected time. Vaylor stood at the edge. "If you step forward," he said, "you will walk the curse itself, not as story, not as words." But as wait, Eloin looked at the pool, her hands trembled. "I will walk," she said. She stepped into the circle. The symbols flared with soft white light. The pool broke like water, and Eloin fell. She did not scream. She stood in a field under a bright sun. The air smelled of grass and summer rain. A young man laughed nearby. He was tall, strong, and human. Valor, before the crown, before the night. Eloin felt the joy of that day press into her chest. It was sharp and sweet, and it hurt more than fear. The vision shifted. She saw the holy queen, kind eyes, steady hands. She saw trust grow between them, promises whispered beneath stars. Then came the court, fear, lies, blades hidden behind prayers. Eloin felt the moment of betrayal like a stone inside her chest. She staggered. The ground changed. Fire, screams, the queen fell. Her final prayer shook the world. "If mercy cannot save you, then eternity shall teach you." Eloin cried out as the curse closed like iron. She fell to her knees. In the chamber, Valor watched as Eloin collapsed within the circle. The symbols burned brighter. "No," he whispered. He stepped forward, but the circle pushed him back. This was her path. Eloin walked again, through centuries, wars that never ended, thrones built on fear, loneliness so deep it echoed. She felt Valor's hunger, not of the body but of meaning, of forgiveness that never came. Her steps grew heavier, her faith wavered. "Why does light allow this?" she whispered. The darkness answered with silence. She fell again, and again. Each time she rose slower. Valor felt the castle shake. Cracks spread along the ritual chamber walls. The keeper shouted warnings, but Valor did not listen. "Eloin," he said, his voice breaking. "Stop." But she could not hear him. Inside the curse, Eloin reached the final memory. The moment Valor accepted the crown of night. The moment he chose to rule instead of end it all. She saw his choice clearly now. It was not cruelty, it was sacrifice. She stood before him in that moment unseen. "You stayed," she whispered, "so others could live." The weight lifted just a little, enough. The pool shattered, light rushed outward. Eloin was thrown back onto the stone floor. Valor caught her before she struck the ground. She was cold, too cold. "Eloin," he said, holding her close, forgetting kings and crowns. Her eyes opened slowly. "I walked," she whispered, "every inch." Tears burned Valor's eyes, though none fell. "You should not have," he said. She smiled weakly. "Now you are not alone in it." The runes across the castle steadied. The curse loosened, but something else awakened. Far beyond Blackthornne Castle, ancient powers stirred, beings that fed on curses and feared change. They had felt the shift, and they would come. Valor held Eloin tighter as the keeper's voice echoed through the chamber. "The balance has been broken," the keeper said in terror. "They are awake." Valor looked down at Eloin. For the first time he knew what he must give up to save her, and it was everything. Blackthornne Castle was quiet, too quiet. The halls, which had once echoed with the weight of centuries, now felt empty, yet alive. Shadows stretched long across the stone floors, moving as if the castle itself breathed. King Valor stood alone in the ritual chamber. His eyes were red, but not with hunger. They glowed with fear, hope, and something he had not felt in centuries, uncertainty. Eloin was nearby, seated on the stone floor. Her hands rested on her knees, fingers intertwined. Her face was pale, but her eyes shone brighter than any torch. "Are they gone?" she asked softly. Valor shook his head. "Not yet, they know. Ancient forces, creatures older than my curse, they have felt the shift." Eloin rose slowly. "Then we must face them," she said. He looked at her. For centuries he had ruled without question. But now he saw her not as a mortal who feared him, not as a subject, but as a companion, equal, brave, unyielding. "You have walked every inch of the curse," he said, "and survived. You are stronger than anyone I have ever known." She smiled faintly. "Because I had to. Because I had to understand you and your pain." Valor's chest tightened. Pain, longing, and hope tangled together. He had ruled a kingdom of darkness, yet never known that light could still walk beside him. And now he feared he might lose her, not to death, but to the weight of what was coming. Outside the castle, clouds twisted unnaturally. The sky darkened further. Shadows moved across the land like living waves. From the forest of stone and ash, shapes emerged, ancient beings whose very existence fed on the curses of kings and queens. They were drawn to Blackthornne Castle by the change Aloan had made. Vaylor stepped toward the balcony, his hands clenched on the cold stone. "They will not stop," he said. "They will not," Aloan agreed. "But we are not the same as we were." Vaylor turned to her. "You've changed everything, even me." Her eyes softened. "Then let us change the world with it." The creatures came at night, faster than any human eye could follow. They struck at the gates, the walls, the very stones. But within the castle, a new light burned, not of sun or fire, but of faith and courage intertwined. The runes flared, glowing white and gold, protecting the castle as if responding to Aloan's presence. Vaylor fought at the front, not with bloodlust but with precision and command. Every strike of his sword, every movement was controlled by centuries of strength and wisdom. Yet each time he looked at Aloan, he saw a force he could not fight, her resilience, her calm, her refusal to bow. Together they were unstoppable. And yet the enemy was patient. It waited for weakness, for hesitation. In the heart of the battle, the castle trembled. Vaylor knew what must be done. He turned to Aloan. "The curse is mine to carry," he said. "If I release it entirely, the castle may fall. You will survive, but I cannot let you bear this alone." Aloan shook her head. "No, we are not alone. We endure it together." He studied her face. He saw trust, courage, and love, the kind of strength that no curse could undo. For the first time he considered something impossible, to relinquish the crown of darkness, to kneel, not in weakness but in devotion. "Then we stand," he said, "together." The creatures reached the castle walls, their forms towering, shifting, and impossible. Vaylor stepped forward, raising his sword, but Aloan stopped him with a gentle hand. "Not like this," she said. "You do not need to fight alone." Vaylor hesitated. "I cannot protect you if I step back." "You already have," she replied, "and now let us end this together." She moved to the ritual chamber's pool where the runes had once shown memories. She touched the water. It rippled, glowing brighter than ever. The light spread, filling every corridor, every hall, every shadow. Vaylor felt it. The curse weakened, not gone but tamed. The ancient forces outside shrieked in fury, unable to penetrate the new power. Aloan raised her hands toward Vaylor. "We walk this path as one," she said. He took her hands. "Together," he whispered. The light surged. The creatures screamed and vanished. The castle walls shook but held. The throne room, the towers, the gates, they all stood firm. The darkness receded, not destroyed but balanced. Vaylor fell to his knees. Exhaustion, relief, and awe washed over him. He had fought for centuries, yet this battle was not one with weapons. It was one with trust, endurance, and love. Aloan knelt beside him. She placed her hand on his shoulder. "You are free," she said softly. He looked up at her, disbelief in his eyes. "I am?" he asked. "Yes," she replied. "The curse is broken not by ending you but by walking it, by understanding it, by sharing it." Vaylor's red eyes softened. They glowed with warmth now, not hunger. For the first time in centuries he felt human, not weak, not mortal, but real. Days passed and Blackthornne Castle changed. The halls no longer whispered fear but respect. The runes glowed softly, reminders of what had been endured. Guards and servants moved freely, without the terror that had gripped them for ages. Vaylor walked among them, tall and commanding, yet not distant. And beside him always was Aloan. Her prayers and courage had reshaped the kingdom, reshaped him. People whispered stories of the giant vampire king and the nun who had walked the curse, who had faced darkness and not bowed. Some said the sun would rise again. Some said the kingdom would see light for the first time in centuries. One evening atop the highest tower, Vaylor and Aloan watched the pale clouds shift toward silver. "You could have left," he said softly. "I would have understood." "I could not," she replied. "I would not. You carried the world alone too long." Valor smiled faintly, a rare warmth. "And yet you chose to walk with me," she nodded, "because even a king must learn to kneel." He took her hand. "Then we walked together always." A soft wind moved across the tower. It carried hope, change, and the quiet promise of dawn. And though the sun had not yet pierced the horizon, for the first time in a century, Blackthornne Castle seemed alive, not with fear but with possibility. The kingdom had been tested. Its ruler had been broken and rebuilt. And the girl of faith had taught the king of night what it meant to be more than a curse. Valor spoke one last time that evening. Words carried more weight than any sword. "You will always be the light I could not see," he said. Eloin smiled. "And you will always be the shadow I chose to walk beside." They looked out across the land together, hands clasped, hearts steady. Whatever the future held, new threats, new challenges, they would face it side by side. Neither king nor none alone, but two souls who had changed the world by walking every inch of fear, pain, and hope together.